Welcome to the Unconsumed podcast. I'm Lee Corning. I'm here with my good friend Stephen Lynerd, who's in from Chicago for the weekend. And Stephen is an interesting character, and it fits outside of our normal business tech vein that we usually go down. And last week we had an owner of a gym that was early in the CrossFit movement, so like we went to a little bit of science and the biology and chemistry and the diets. And also physical exercise. And now we're to you, which is the other way, which is the creative vein. And so I meet hundreds of people that have tried to become professional musicians. And you are one of the only guys I've ever met that's been able to make a reality out of it.
Well, it's an honor. I mean, it's an interesting way to go in life, because you think, when you're growing up, so it's like, it's great that you're in music, but you have to make sure you do something to make money. You know, you have to provide for a family, and so it can be a daunting thing, because when people think of musicians, they think, I heard this live band at the bar I went to see, and you know, they don't think, I can actually earn a living being a musician and being creative. And so I feel very privileged. I feel very lucky to have to be making a living as a musician full time. And school was very difficult for me, so music was something that I succeeded at. It was something.
Where'd you go, by the way?
University of Maryland, College Park.
Is that the Terrapins one?
The Terrapins. Those are the Terrapins.
Okay, so that's like the ones that are like in the SEC. Or
they are in the Big
SEC.
Ten. They're in the Big Ten for some reason.
Okay. So College Park isn't like the satellite campus. That's the main campus.
College Park is the main thing. There's UMBC, Baltimore County, focusing more on the medical field, and they're
the ones that got that 16-1 victory in the NCAA this year.
Ruined everyone's bracket. So
after I missed so many games, I'm just wanting to see chaos at that point.
Right, exactly. Well, the bracket landed on my desk. Fill out this bracket, enter the office thing, and it's like, if history is any, any indication, I don't really know. So I'm just picking random things. I think more people were successful just picking random teams rather than trying to be strategic about it.
That's how it's been for the past couple of years, but there was about 3 years ago, whereas if you picked you picked the top seed to the first 2 rounds, you would have gotten almost everything right.
Yeah.
And then, for whatever reason, even if half the country picks the right picks for the first 2 rounds, like no one seems to be able to get that perfect bracket.
It's a unicorn.
It's been like, I don't think anyone's ever got a perfect bracket, and there's plenty of people trying every year.
And there's plenty of money to be had if you can do it.
Warren Buffett offered $1 billion one year to someone with the perfect bracket, and I was like,
I would love to see that pay out.
Yes, I think he might. That's like the one guy that can make that bet and be like, all right, it might be legit.
Exactly.
Sounds like one of those memes with the white van on it, and then it says "sounds legit."
Sounds legit. I got had by the white van speaker scam in DC.
What does that mean? So
in DC, I started college in '97. Around '97 to '99, there was something called a white van speaker scam, and it was you pulled to a stoplight. These guys would pull next to you in a white van and give you some incredibly articulate story. They were well dressed, like, "Hey man, we're audio installers. This is this huge install, a big fancy house, and the owner changed their mind on these speakers, and we can't take them back because they were custom, and so they're useless. But we'd love to sell them to you. Do you like are you interested in any really good speakers? We got to do this now." And I'm an audiophile, so I take listening to music really seriously, and so custom speakers, like, cool man, let's just pull over. We'll show you the speakers, and if you're into it, we can sell them to you. So we pulled into a lot. And usually the heavier the item, the better, because there's a heavy copper coil in there. So they pull these boxes out, and these beautiful speakers. I mean, beautiful oak cabinetry, and I'm lifting them up, and they're really good and heavy, gold-plated connectors on the back. I'm like, I'm in. What do you need? He goes, just give me $300 for the pair. We'll call it even. These are like $1,000 speakers. So I'm a college kid. I had a very small checking account. And I went and essentially drained it. Gave these guys cash. They were so kind. They loaded them into my car for me. Drove off. Took them back to my dorm room. Opened them up. And I noticed a bunch of sand out of the bottom of the other box that they did not open. And these were empty speaker cabinets filled with sand to make them feel heavy. No real speakers inside. No electronics to be had. And I'd never see these guys again. Right. Of course, you don't think to see the license plate. And I got had by the white van speaker scam.
And so this is something that's like, it happened a bunch then.
Yeah, I think you can even Google white van speaker scam and different stories will come up of people with very similar things.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude, that's wild. I have my brother-in-law was showing me these speakers he bought from a guy on the side of the road, and like there was actual speakers in there, but they were bad.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people just go to Radio Shack, get a $2 thing and put it in a cabinet and call it good. And
90% of the population has no idea. Right. I know I wouldn't.
Yeah.
If I was opening off the bed, I could be like, "Oh yeah, it looks legit."
Sure. Exactly right.
But anyways, back to you.
Back to me.
So you're a professional musician. You're the leader of the Stephen Lynerd group, which is a jazz group.
Yep.
And you have 3 CDs.
3 CDs.
Of which I happen to have one right here.
The latest one.
The latest one, still in the shrink wrap. Got her today.
Yep.
Is this available on any digital outlets?
Oh, absolutely, all of them. It's on Spotify. It might be on Pandora on my station, but it's definitely on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, Bandcamp, all of the places people might go to get, and of course, physical
media. Yeah.
It's a double disc, so it's two CDs.
Okay, so I didn't see too many songs.
Yeah, there should be 16 tracks, hopefully.
16 tracks. Are they longer?
A little bit, yeah. I 2 CDs. I spaced them because it's called The Story because it tells a story musically, and so I wanted the tunes to be in a certain order on the disc. So that's hence the double disc. So.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's very cool. Congratulations on that, by the way. And you've got 3 in all.
3 in all.
So that's huge. So what's the span of the career look like so far? How many years has this been?
Oh, I've been a professional musician, ever since college. I just knew that was what I was going to be doing, and was gigging in high school, actually, with a little Dixieland quartet we had. We would go and play old folks' homes and little parties and things like that, and it was like your first income stream as a high school kid. That's a big hairy deal. Yeah. So when I got to college, I went to be a classical timpanist. So play in an orchestra, play timpani. That was my life. For people that don't know what the timpani is or haven't thought about this since junior high when you had to play the drums to stay out of music appreciation class, it's the giant copper kettle drums. Yeah, giant copper kettle drums, and that was my passion. So I wanted to be a timpanist, and I studied with one of the best timpanists in the country, and that was my path. The problem with some of these specialized instruments is they cost incredible sums of money.
They gotta be crazy.
If you go to the symphony orchestra, if you were to go hear a professional symphony orchestra, and you look in the back of the percussion section, you'll probably see 4, sometimes 5 or more timpani. It's likely that set of 4 drums, $45,000.
Really?
So they're specialized. They have different pedal mechanisms, and there's no college kid can afford this. And so if you play the clarinet, the flute, the violin, a smaller instrument, you own it usually. You can carry it with you anywhere you go. When you leave college, you can practice it anywhere and continue to take auditions. As a percussionist, you have a small window of time to really win an audition unless you have access to instruments.
Right.
So I left college, made it through a couple of rounds of auditions, but I could never quite close. And I could never quite land that deal, win that audition.
Right.
And here I am without an instrument. So I was living in Frisco, Texas at the time, working at a church, and I'd always loved playing jazz vibes, but it wasn't my forte.
Jazz
vibraphone. So vibraphone is the instrument that I mostly play now on the Stephen Lynerd group.
When you say vibraphone, I've got xylophone in my head.
You do.
Similar or not similar?
Yes, but not really.
Okay.
I actually have a friend, and I'm going to tell him about this so he tunes in. He has a company called It's Not a Xylophone. He has an entire brand called It's Not a Xylophone because as vibraphone, it's very common for people to call it a xylophone, but they're very different instruments. And here's the simple breakdown.
Okay.
A xylophone, usually the bars are made of wood. It doesn't sustain like a vibraphone would, and I'll explain that in a minute. It's higher pitched.
Okay.
And it's typically an orchestral instrument. Because it's higher pitched and it's made of wood, it will really cut through the bulk and the weightiness of a symphony orchestra.
Okay.
The vibraphone, the bars are made of metal. And if I get a chance, I'll splice a picture in here of the two different instruments in the final edit so we can see.
Yeah.
But the vibraphone, the bars are made of metal. It has a pedal, like a piano has, that acts like a sustain pedal. So you push the pedal down, the note rings. The next thing that distinguishes them, it's called a vibraphone because it has a vibrato built in. So if you ever see a violinist play and they move their hand, or a singer sings and they create that pretty tone, what that is, vibrato, the technical term, you're taking a note and you're bending it in and out of tune very quickly. So it produces a pretty sound. So instead of ba, you have ba, 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 ba. So it creates a more pleasing tone. Vibraphone has a motor on it that I can control on, off, and speed, and it creates that tone. So when I push the pedal down and that note rings, that vibrato kicks in because there are fans under each note, and that creates that pretty sound.
Oh, okay, interesting. So
long answer, but that's the idea.
So this is did the vibraphone exist in like Beethoven time?
No,
because it has these machines in it.
Correct. Vibraphone is one of the few American instruments we can truly claim. It has its roots in the, like the xylophone does, in the marimba, which is a South American instrument. So the marimba sort of birthed, for all intents and purposes, birthed the modern day mallet instruments. Xylophone, vibraphone, the orchestral bells, those things that we find in modern orchestral music.
Gotcha.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
So you're also a music director.
I'm a music director.
And I heard you drop a hint to my next line here, which is, you said, I'll splice a picture in there, because Stephen edits all the Unconsumed podcasts. You are the editor.
I am.
And so Stephen has seen my complete evolution in creating these podcasts, because I've sent him some files that are just horrible in terms of bad tooling, bad execution, sound files that are all wrong. All the everything you can do wrong, I've done at least twice. I was going to say once, but
I must say they're not sent to me with any sense of disinterest. They're not sent to me, unknowingly, like, hey, just make this work at whatever the cost. This is a partnership. It's a work in progress, and we're on a good trajectory.
I'm sorry I did my best.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was telling him before the podcast, I send you those files and it's not malicious, I promise.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we've done this for 20... We've done the Unconsumed podcast for 21 episodes now.
Yeah.
And 10 of them have been this higher quality, higher production value.
Very kind of you to say that.
Well, it went from 0 to, anything above 0 is pretty good multiple.
Sure.
So yeah, it's gotten a lot better over time. And then we've also got multiple cameras and things, which brings us to the next conversation here, and that is, like, we just spent a long time today putting together the new studio equipment, and we were talking about putting together a video, if anyone actually wants to see it, of how you put together all this stuff. And so I just have it here while we're looking at it. So we have 3 cameras, and these are them. It's the Canon Vixia HF G21. These are pretty good cameras, good battery life, high quality. We have them all on Amazon Basic mounts. And then we have today's new adventure, which, I kid you not,
an adventure it was.
God bless them. But here is the Blackmagic A10 Studio Television Studio HD. And these are actually really cool machines, and it pairs up nicely with our capture device, which is called the HyperDeck Studio Mini. If you're interested in this, or watching how these get all plugged in, if you're one of those folks that watches this and says, I'd like to do something like that, let us know. We'll help you out with it, because we literally spent 7 hours today getting this all plugged in.
No exaggeration.
On the phone with customer support.
3 times.
3 times. If you're not a networking aficionado, it's not an easy deal.
No, in fact, I was thinking as we were working on it today, if you're going to get something like this set up, it's not a bad idea to call your buddy who you know does networking for a living, buy him dinner, have him come over, or her, have them come over and help you with some of the jargon, and even be on the phone with tech support with you. Because I think having these kinds of things take a village to get going. Once they're assembled, really great things can happen, but it can mean hours of frustration and, unfortunately, potential abandonment of a project if you don't have the pieces in place. I think perseverance, but also having a team of people to really help in that final product can be a good thing.
Yeah, and so like if I was starting the Unconsumed podcast all over, and it's by no means like grown out of proportion or anything, but we started on a cell phone in a conference room at in an office, and it was with this microphone, which is like maybe $100.
Yep.
My wife bought it for me for my birthday.
Look at that.
And she said, do your podcast thing you've been talking about. And I was like, game on.
Love it.
And so it wasn't even a new cell phone. It was an old cell phone.
Yeah.
And then you can buy extremely inexpensive video editing software if you don't have a Mac, which I believe comes with some video editing stuff on board. I used the NCH Studio, and it comes with all the compression and the wave pad and all the stuff you need. So you can get a podcast off the ground onto iTunes, onto Google Play for like less than $300.
Not bad.
And that's on the high end.
Yeah.
So if you are considering doing something like this, game on. Like it's doable.
It's doable, and to this point, I would caution somebody, if you're just getting started, don't go out and immediately buy all of the expensive stuff, because if you don't have the comfort in front of a camera, if you don't have the content of the podcast, you're going to have very, very high def subpar material. So get yourself comfortable with
Let's say subpar.
Get yourself comfortable with the idea of a podcast. Get yourself comfortable first on a super low budget. Get good at it, and then work in some of this stuff. I think your order was the correct order, because you got used to the podcast, you got used to the dialogue, the energy, the back and forth, and you weren't so nervous about all the gear right away because you didn't have it.
Yeah.
And so now, as you've gotten the podcast going, now we're introducing HD, we're introducing more stuff, which I think helps it out.
Yeah, and the thing that we did on the Unconsumed podcast that I'm forever indebted to our sponsors is because they've footed the bill for all these new things. And those weren't deals where I was adding a ton of value to them up front. This was like, hey, you have 0 views.
We believe in you.
Or, hey, I hope you're having fun. Here's $20, kind of thing. And that's not something that's available for everybody.
Yeah.
But it's something worth noting, like how this actually got snowballing. So that's that on that stuff. You have a couple interesting projects coming up that I thought would be interesting to talk about. You've got a European tour coming up in 2020, which is killer.
Yeah.
Because there's people that can say they're professional musicians, and they like you said, go down to the local pub and they play.
And that's great.
That's a couple loud things, and that is great. Like, good for you. Like,
I do that sometimes still too.
Especially if it's like your side gig, right? So like if you're fulfilling your obligations, doing something else, and then you have this itch that you continue to need to scratch. Game on. Like Thursday night, it's live music night, and you're good enough to do it.
And you're bringing joy to people, which is in the end game is one of the main reasons why musicians get up in the morning, is to see other people take joy in what they're doing. And so the weekend warriors who are playing in cover bands and doing things like that is phenomenal. And that needs to happen. And if that's not your main income source, great. So
yeah, the only time I think it gets damaging is like if it's not going great, you haven't pursued anything else, you've got people on board with you. When I say like people on board, I mean like people you're continuing to peddle the dream to, or people that are counting on you financially, and you continue to chase that. And people do that in tech all the time too.
Absolutely.
And it is like you see some guys go after it. And when I say guys, I heard you say guys or gals. I don't do that, and I probably should. Or I don't know if there's another word for that, but
I think it's just the way of the world.
Yeah, well, fair enough. I see people go down this track where they're chasing a dream, or they're chasing a startup, or they're chasing this giant potential outcome because they saw it happen on Bloomberg, or they saw it on in the music world like MTV or something. And that's one of the real reasons this podcast exists, is because the Jeff Bezos story, the Larry Ellison story, the Zuckerberg story, those happen like once generationally.
Right.
And if that's your goal,
right.
I mean, I hope you get it. Like it happened once.
Right.
But it probably won't happen. So what you should do is think about things you can do in the meantime that would even give you a shot to do stuff like that.
Absolutely. And something that we didn't discuss, and I don't even know if you know this, is my wife and I actually have a completed business plan for a jazz club restaurant.
Oh, yeah?
That we worked over about a 4.5 to 5 year period of time and took our time. We both went back to school, Michigan State Online School of Business and Hospitality. We both got our certificates from there and did it all online.
What's the price tag on that?
Expensive.
Real? Okay.
Yeah, it was expensive.
Because we always talk about online school on this podcast.
Yeah, it was expensive, but we, at the time, it was like, you know what, this is going to be a good thing for us to do, and we have no regrets. Mm-hmm. We have no regrets. But we're glad we did it, and this business plan, 60 to 80 some odd pages long. I mean, projections, the whole nine, down to like the silverware, where it's been signed off on by some pretty heavy people in the industry and looked over and got some good traction. And we actually had an invitation to open it up in Nashville, and things didn't quite come together like we thought, but we chased that dream hard. And right. Deborah took a year off of teaching to really fine-tune the numbers and do the math, and it looks good. You know, we've had some interest in people suggesting we should sell this business plan since it works.
Okay.
But we were holding on to it for right now, but we've had a number of people express interest, like, hey, if you ever decide to get this thing going, I want in. Mm-hmm. I want in financially. Our business plan required a lot of upfront capital because one of the reasons restaurants close so quickly is there's nothing in reserves.
Yeah, you mind throwing a number at it?
I think our dream opening, was 2.2.
Okay.
So that included a building, that included all equipment, that included everything, and then 6 to 8 months of operating costs,
which is additional,
built into
the two.
Built into the two. So it's for, on average in Chicago, you can open up a bar for I think $300,000.
Yep.
If you just go into an existing space, paint it, get some gear in there, you can get in there for pretty cheap and open up a bar.
And it comes with all the licenses and things.
All that kind of stuff.
Which is the highest barrier to entry in that space.
Right.
Yep.
Right. But very few people open up with that reserves. And so when things get lean, which they will, because they just do in the restaurant industry, and you don't have that built in, you're going to flop. So ours, some investors looked at ours in bulk initially because, like, that is a lot of money. And we're like, well, look at this, though. Like, we're going to be able to stay afloat for longer than most places, right, while we keep the dream going. And let's say a place opens, they're open for about 8 months. They realize their marketing scheme isn't working out at all, and it's really hosed them. Well, now they're out of money. They're having to let people go, and now they don't even have a business yet to try the new marketing scheme to see if it works differently.
Right.
So if you can have that flexibility built in, you can try that other thing while you're going through your reserves and hopefully get the tank.
Yeah, so if you wanted to buy a McDonald's right now, it would cost you like $2-3. And so, like, those are the figures, I want to say 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. So, it doesn't sound astronomical. When you were like, it's really expensive, I was like, oh my gosh, Steven's going to open a jazz club for $10 million. Right. So, it's like, it's not out of the picture. What have you examined any other, like, alternative financing scenarios?
We didn't go too deep in it. There were some interesting evolutions with it, with people who wanted to partner with us, and that didn't pan out, and we had a couple people who wanted to move it around the country, and we were at a time in our life when we were going to need to paint to get off the ladder. And so we just...
I've never heard that before in my whole life. But I like it because it's not...
it's not offensive.
It's not too crass.
It's not too crass. It's the non-crass version of what everyone else is seeing.
That's the equivalent is when I say, good night.
Good night. Right, right. My grandfather used to say, bean soup. There are ways to get around it, right?
Paint or get off the ladder.
Paint or get off the ladder. So we when our last option went out, sort of fizzled. All relationships are wonderful. I mean, everything's intact. We decided, you know what? We have some new opportunities coming our way. Deborah took a teaching job. I had a church job open up. I realized I was going to essentially have to walk away from my first
first hustle, yeah.
Probably my first hustle for a couple of years, essentially. Because everybody, absolutely everybody who was successful in the industry said the same thing. If you want to succeed, this needs to consume you. It absolutely must consume you. It must consume you because you need to be there all the time. If you're going to own a restaurant, you also need to be washing dishes. You can't just have this dream life where I opened up a restaurant, now I'm just collecting all of the money. It doesn't happen that way.
Right.
You need to be in there. You need to have your blood, sweat, and tears in that place and see all the operations of it. We also wanted to offer health care. What bar offers health care to anybody? We wanted to be different kinds of owners. And the place was going to be different. The acoustics were going to be different. The service was going to be different. I read Danny Meyer's book, Setting the Table, which I can't recommend enough to anybody who wants to be in this industry.
What's it called?
Danny Meyer, he's the author.
Okay.
Setting the Table. It's all about hospitality, specifically in a restaurant. Danny Meyer birthed the most successful restaurant group in New York. He's responsible for Shake Shack. He's responsible for some of the greatest restaurants. But Danny Meyer, Setting the Table. I'm a slow reader. The thing took me 3 days to put down. Okay. It was phenomenal.
Doesn't there happen to be an Audible version of that?
I'm sure there is.
Setting the
Table. Phenomenal book. Even if you're not in the restaurant industry, it's a great book for business, for leadership, for interaction, for taking... You and I were talking before about sharing stories about sort of, getting your stance on a phone call and, good aggression versus unhealthy aggression. His takes the approach of how do you win from the softer approach? How do you keep people coming back to your restaurant by hospitality? How do you just nice? And so we were taking some of those principles, some good Stanley, not Stanley Drucker, the leader.
I was going to say Stanley Kubrick.
No, not him.
He's got some good lessons.
Yeah, Daniel Druckmann, I think, and just getting some good leadership training into our employees, getting some of those things that restaurants don't think about.
Yeah,
and so it was a process, and we really believed in it. But going back to why we got here in the first place, you chase this dream, and how do you reinvent yourself? How do you diversify? And then going back, if we may, to where we got on the vibraphone topic, I'm at this church in Frisco. I now don't have timpani. I have this dream of being a timpanist. It's not coming together.
Right.
So I talked to the church and said, hey, would you buy me a vibraphone? It'll cost you $8,000, and I will use it in my outside professional world, but I'll also play it on Sunday mornings sometimes for the church, and it's your instrument technically, but I want to use it. I'm like, okay, sure. So they bought a vibraphone. I ended up buying it from them years later.
Okay.
But that was my
discount?
Sort of, yeah. So that was my...
I love a good deal, so I
got a good deal. So that was the way I diversified myself. And so I'm living in Frisco, which is near Denton, which is near UNT, easily one of the greatest jazz schools in the country.
Okay.
So how do I exist?
For the record, people aren't from Texas. Frisco is about 25 miles north of Dallas.
North of Dallas, yep. It's the Evanston of Chicago. It is the north of Skokie. It's that sort of city above the city that's growing and doing good things.
It's the Trenton of New York.
The Trenton of New York. I
heard Trenton's not that nice.
It's the Georgetown of Austin, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
It's probably pretty close, actually.
It's probably the Palo Alto of L.A.
Right. So anyway, just diversifying myself. Yeah, just diversifying myself to saying, okay, what can I do here? I'm going to be a vibraphonist. What else? What aren't people doing?
Mm-hmm.
And I realized I need to look at the world, find a lack somewhere, look at my own skill set and go, how can I use my skill set to make an inroad into this problem? And maybe it's not a problem, it's just something that doesn't necessarily exist.
Right.
And so at that time, no one was really taking music of the church and arranging it in a jazz setting. And so I decided to do that. Just do creative things. And I'm going and playing these jazz clubs, going and playing restaurants, and it's different music, you know. It's something that people aren't playing all the time, and it set me apart from my counterparts. So it was a way to diversify myself. And fast forward, when I have this dream, this business plan, now we need to put it on hold, and maybe in a couple years' time, look at it again, tweak some things, go in with somebody else, and you just have to not constantly reinvent yourself, because that doesn't give you a place of stability. But look at your
constant reinvention is also can be a little cliche, right?
Right.
So one of the things that pops in my mind when you mention these stories, or hey, I couldn't get the drum I needed, and that dream is going to die if I can't get the drum, and I don't have the money for the drum, and no one's going to buy me a $45,000 drum.
Right.
And I realize it's three or four drums, but drum kit.
Right.
I'm thinking about Neil Peart's
killer
drum set. I read this book. So it became mainstream. It became a book, or a movie rather. That's the Moneyball book. Mm-hmm. So if you never read Moneyball, I hate to be one of those guys that's like, you gotta read the book, it's way better than the movie. But there's one line in the book that's obviously not in the movie, and it is, when resources are short, look at the market for things that are undervalued. And so it's like, couldn't get the drum, didn't have the dough to get the drum.
Right.
You have to observe what's in the market, and that what people aren't doing or people aren't valuing, and you can play ball there. And I always see that. I always give this view of how to get yourself into games that maybe you aren't necessarily good enough to play, or maybe you shouldn't be in, but there's still a chance for you. And then once you get in there, you can kind of hustle your way around and get yourself to a point where you do become valuable. And I liken it to a pickup game when you're 10 and everyone else is 15, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you have to wait for your chance,
and
then when someone gets hurt or the sun starts going down and someone's girlfriend shows up, like, I'm 10, but you guys only have 9.
Right, exactly.
If you guys want to stop playing, you can make me not play anymore, or still not play, but if you want to play ball, let's go.
Yeah.
And so I know it's a little hokey, and it may be, it's about one level in the depth chart, but it's just practical and realistic.
Yeah.
And the more I'm getting older, and the more businesses I'm getting involved with, and the more the deeper I go in just like a professional setting, it's so true. If you show up and you hang in there, you'll get a shot, and it's worked out for you.
Well, it's worked out for me, but taking your analogy a step further, you're that 10-year-old playing with the 15-year-olds. What if you're fast? What if you're weaving in and out of that pickup game and dusting people, and you're the element of surprise? Now they're remembering you, right? And in business, and in music, you can come in and you're the underdog. And being a Lions, Browns, and Mets fan, I'm all about the underdogs. So far, they've never been surprising. But
that's the biggest, a hodgepodge of horribleness.
It's incredible.
You live in Chicago and you don't even get to have the glory of the Cubs last win?
It's called a factory of sadness. That's my sports existence is a factory.
Did you pick it that way on purpose? Because
my sports teams,
those are those are the basement dwellers of every league.
So, funny story, and we'll get back to our analogies. This is funny. So I grew up in New York and DC.
Okay.
Grew up soccer and baseball fan. So Mets from growing up in New York. I wasn't a Yankees fan because everyone was a Yankees fan where I was. So I chose the Mets. My father was a Mets fan, and that's where I was. So great. 86 series, great.
Okay.
So that I didn't follow football at all. I was 27 years old before I could explain what a first down was.
That's
awful. Are we still friends? So I'm living in Texas. And they don't really do these other sports. Football is where I was.
Right.
I was surrounded by fair weather Cowboys fans at the time. Not all Cowboys fans.
What year was this approximately?
04.
Okay.
04, 05.
So it was post glory days.
Oh yeah, and this is also where the Rangers were basically paying people to come to games. I mean, it was a dark scene in Texas sports history. So the guy I'm working for, he's like, Steven, you got to get into football.
What a killer voice this guy's got.
Yeah, man, ex-Marine Chuck Swindoll, and I'm like, well. I'm not going to be a Cowboys fan. So he's helping me process. And I had read somewhere that Detroit had a team. I'm a muscle car fanatic, so Detroit has a special place in my heart. So then I thought, I'm also an underdog guy. So I asked him, I was like, who's the worst team in all of football? And I'll never forget. He goes, don't do this. I'm like, no. Who's the worst team? And he's sitting across from me. He does this. This is at the Stonebriar Country Club. He's there, and he mutters, Lions. I'm like, who? He goes, the Lions. I'm like, that's my team.
And so how long did it take for you to pick your favorite team, then for them to play the first game that you watched?
Oh, right. I mean, this was summertime that I chose the team. Summer of 2004, and I was like, when does football start? I mean, he was so embarrassed because he's sitting there with all of his buddies, and here's the doofus who doesn't even know when the football season starts. And I actually wrote to the team and explained, here I'm a new fan, and I'm going to read about Barry Sanders. I'm going to read all these things because I want to be a true fan.
Okay, and name one other Lions great other than Barry Sanders.
Oh, who's the guy with the curse? Guy from the 50s with the curse.
I don't know. I'm not asking you to put you on the spot.
No, it's not coming to me now. No, I mean, at the time, I was...
They have a guy with a curse?
Oh, yeah, the whole curse. The guy who Lions let go, and he's like, you guys are never going to win a championship ever. And
really? And was he good? Was he like a legend?
Yeah. When at the time, had you asked me that question, I would have rattled probably 5 names off.
All right. Well, we don't have our guy to look stuff up on the internet, so I'll find this.
And I chose the Browns because brown is my favorite color. It doesn't get any deeper than that.
It's not even brown, though.
I know. That's all. That's as deep as that went.
Detroit. Okay, I got a little autocorrect there. Detroit football
legends
curse. Detroit Lions football curse. It is Bobby Lane.
That's right, Bobby Lane.
Okay. I apologize for belaboring that on the podcast here, because as much as people love to dial in and listen to people look up stuff on
it makes for great television.
Yeah. So Bobby Lane, and then you picked the Browns because your favorite color is brown.
My favorite color is brown,
which is brutal because they don't even wear brown.
It's awful. It's
okay. Are you open to rethinking this decision?
No, I'm not really.
So you found yourself in a wretched mistake.
Yeah, I'm going to
commit. You realize your error.
I'm going to commit.
And you're committed to the failure.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of... Because I think part of it was being surrounded by Fairweather fans. Like, I don't want to be a Fairweather fan. I mean, shortly after becoming a Lions fan, we're 0-16. Like, there are people with paper bags over their heads on the sidelines. And I'm like, you know what? I'm in. I committed. I'm going to stay in the mess. And who knows?
Well, here's my take on that. And I've had long conversations with people that have played sports their whole lives, people that haven't played sports at all, people very casual fans, and they're just like, if you don't love the team or you don't really care that much, why are you watching?
Right.
And so I had this epiphany like maybe 3 years ago. And I'm a Chicago Bears fan, and I use air quotes on that because I love to watch the Bears when they're on. Mm-hmm. But then there was this moment where I was like, I watch all the Bears games. They haven't come to my work one time and been like, hey, you're doing a good job.
Yep.
Or like, and my biggest beef is with like grown men that wear other grown men's names on their back in the form of a jersey.
Yep.
I'm like, that's your peer. Like if you're 10, that's the max.
Yep.
I know there's some comedy bits that hit that point pretty hard, which I enjoy. So I won't try to replay them too hard. Chris D'Elia has a great one. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I just like, these guys don't care about you. They're not from the city that they're playing for. So it's not like you're cheering for Chicago or Detroit or the Browns.
It's a job.
Like, it's a guy from another place. And then Seinfeld has that bit about we're cheering for laundry.
Right. Cheering for laundry. It's so true, though.
It's killer. This guy's out, this guy's in. Yeah. And so the closest thing I could get to that would made me feel better about the situation was, I don't care who's in the jerseys as long as they're Bears.
Yeah. And
they're wearing the helmets and stuff too, so like I don't know who's in there.
Yeah. Hey. I love the blue collar nature of the Lions. I love the blue collar nature of Cleveland and the Browns, and sort of the whole Steelers thing too. Just that blue collar grit, and there's no flash for the sake of flash.
It comes with a lot of there's a lot of history with the Steelers that I think is cool, and then they have a style that is appealing to a lot of that.
Yeah. So that's sort of how the sports thing came about.
So we had Tyler Lorenzen on this podcast. Yeah. He played for the Saints.
Yeah.
And so we were talking about like the value in understanding sport, having been a part in sport.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can learn a ton of things from being in it, even watching it.
Yeah.
Watching how people react to certain things, I think is like it's a socialization, it's a self-awareness thing.
Absolutely.
And I'm trying to couple that with the fact that they don't care about me, the fan, at all.
Yeah.
Like this is a ticking time bomb, and at the end, I don't make any more money.
Right. Exactly.
Like, all right. So am I the one like watching this? I don't know.
Who's the sucker? Right.
Yeah. And so it's one of the other points I'd bring up is do you have any perspective on the human being's desire to watch other people do stuff? Like, if you think about this, like you're an entertainer, and you have people file into a room to watch you play music. Mm-hmm. When that music is fully available right here, on CD, on Spotify, on iTunes, on Google, like on Amazon, all those things, but they want to see it done live, or they want to see a music video.
Right.
And the biggest examples are like football stadiums hold like 100,000 people. The biggest ones do. And what are they all doing there? What's our fascination with being in places and watching things?
I believe it is a sewn-in human desire for connection.
It's tried.
I think we need connection.
Yeah.
We need to connect. At some point, we need to connect. And how do you connect? You go out and you connect. It doesn't get any deeper than that. Sometimes you want to see how someone does something for the sake of critique.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's, I want to be entertained. Sometimes it's, I have an hour to kill and I'm going to watch this. Why are people watching us right now? Why are you and I sitting here? Why did you have this idea to do a podcast?
Yep.
You want to give the world something. There is absolutely nothing like being on a stage and seeing people engage with what you're doing.
Okay, so maybe as an artist that makes more sense. But if I'm a football player and I'm trying to make $1 million this year, and I'm trying to do well enough so I can make $1.25 million next year, does that same principle apply?
To some people, yes, it does.
Yeah,
I've seen interviews where people genuinely seem to care that the fans are there, that they are winning a game. I don't think it's all about the paycheck for some people.
Yeah,
I think.
Well, some people isn't a very convincing statistic on a whole, right?
I know. I'm new to the sport. It's just what I've seen, and I think sometimes I filter things out more than other people when I watch interviews. And story means everything to me.
Right.
So I want to know, like, here I am editing Tyler Lorenzen's podcast. Like, I had to wait for that thing to render, so I spent probably an hour. Sorry, man. Digging in and learning this story, learning his story.
Right.
And, you guys started talking about college, so then I dug deeper, and it helped me have a connection with him. And so then I'm looking at that against what someone's doing in their lives, and that to me helps tie things together. So I'm more apt to watch and show up and see it go down because I have a connection to his story. And for me, that's why I actually called the album The Story, because it's meaningful. These aren't just randomly assembled songs. Like, some of these songs are 500 years old. Some of them were written 2 years ago. So taking music and telling a story through it and giving people something to listen to. My wife, when we met, wouldn't have been caught dead in a jazz club. Wouldn't have been caught dead listening to jazz. It meant nothing to her. But for her to see it live, I mean, she would sit here and tell you now that's everything. That's the way to experience jazz, especially because it's so interactive. It's a conversation. And so there's something about, I think people want to have that connection. They want to see it go down. It's like if you ever have watched someone blow glass, watch someone do something creative. I know we're back to the creative aspect, but that's what I know. It's special.
Yeah, I could never get on board with the glass blowing thing. People are like, "Oh, it's so creative. It's such."
Have you ever done it?
Creative process? No, I don't.
Okay,
I don't want to.
Find a time. There's a lot of museums. We did it in December, and I was the same way. I would have said the same thing in December, like glass blowing. Our family was in Newport News, Virginia, visiting my brother for Christmas.
Okay.
And the local museum, the Chrysler Museum, they have a whole glass blowing like school. And we signed up and we did it. And changed my mind on it.
Yeah.
The people who do it, that is an art form that's mind melting. How difficult that is. It's incredible. Whether or not you like it or not, to get there is pretty ridiculous.
Well, I understand there are talented people doing things that I don't necessarily want to do, and thank goodness, because I've got some glass cups I like, and if I had to make them,
right,
we'd have a problem. Right?
We have a sort of a problem here.
Yeah, it's like it's leaking.
Right, exactly.
It never didn't leak.
Yeah.
Oh man. So yeah, it's just like it's a statement of specialization. I mean,
yeah.
If you've got people trying to do things they're not good at,
yeah,
I just don't feel like I need to get involved with the glass blowing scene and then try to think I'm like an amateur glass blower.
No, I think it's more for the perspective of seeing what it's like, why are people listening to this? They want to hear what you have to say, what your guests have to say. So there's a bit of, like, when I've listened to some of them in the editing process, like, I have absolutely no connection or interest because I'm not in the business world, right? So people talk about buying and selling companies doesn't actually impress me. Like, when someone says, oh yeah, I started this and I sold this, like, hey, cool, man. Good. That doesn't make me go, whoa, like it would someone in the business world.
Yeah.
But I want to know about it. Like, I want to get in and hear the story. To me, story is everything.
Yeah, so I'll tell you this. I'll give you the glass blowing thing if you give me this.
All right.
Is that every person I want to have on this podcast and they're telling their story, it's mostly so that people that listen to the story will get to a point where they can say, oh, they did it. He or she isn't that much smarter than me. They've given me enough little nuggets of a breadcrumb trail to go down where I could do this.
Yeah.
I could do something, not necessarily that exactly, but something, a derivative of that.
Yeah.
It's, it starts to dovetail onto our original conversation around, reinvention, resources as opposed to what's being valued. And I think there is this very easy to give up. Let me see if I can come up with a term that fits this. And it's like people, I feel like, are giving up quicker on things than maybe they need to. But then there's this balance with how far do you take it.
Right.
Chris Ryder and I were sitting here one day. He was saying one of some of the worst advice I ever got is never, ever, ever give up.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's time to fold it up.
And run.
Yes. But so I feel like some people get to that, they don't even get to the ever, ever, ever give up. They just do the never.
Right.
I covered up the rest of the...
Right.
And it's like I just don't start it or I don't do the thing because it seems too hard. I want to just continue doing the safe thing that I'm doing now.
Right.
And so when these people come on and they tell these stories about taking risk, I was talking with Barry a couple nights ago, and he's like, I got in my car and I drove to Tampa or something, and I'm like, every guy that's been on here has said something like that. I got all my stuff and I shipped it over here and let it rip for a while.
I drove to Texas from New York and did it.
Yeah, so you having that story too.
Yeah.
It seems like a rite of passage.
Well, it is. And I what I would say to people, and again, I'm coming at it from a creative perspective, and I know most of the people who listen to this are in the business world, but...
You're making it sound like business people can't be creative.
So here's what I'm saying.
Right.
If you have that bug, like if you're in the 9-to-5 office, lanyard, polo tucked into khakis, lunch at Chipotle job, like you can, in the firehouse subs occasionally, pursue that creative outlook. Right. Because the world will be better for it. Even if you're not trying to make it big, even if you're not trying to change the world, I think pursuing a creative aspect... I've talked to a number of people who are a friend of mine works for Plant Moran, the finance company.
Yep.
He's an auditor, and someone recently told him, "You want to be more successful in this part of your profession? Pursue your creative side, no matter what. Pursue it at not all costs, but pursue it." And so for him, it's been cooking, it's been hosting events or parties and planning something like that he would never have done before because he didn't have the time. And so he chose to pursue that. For me, I'm choosing to try to get into a business side of my world now. And I think both can meet and both should and could cross.
Yeah. One thing you said there that hit me was you don't have to light the world on fire.
Yeah.
And I feel like people see it as a tremendous failure if they don't light the world on fire. Right. Like if your Instagram picture doesn't get 300 likes,
right,
you'll take it down.
Right.
Because it's embarrassing.
Right, because you're not the model the world needs to see.
Yeah, and so I was thinking about this when like the first 10 episodes of the podcast, like they were pretty good. I thought so. But then there's the second phase, and I've left all the old ones up, and it was all the learning, all the fumbling was going on there, and I'm like, that is the process,
right?
And I don't want to forget that because that is kind of part of the beauty of it at all.
And as this grows, that's what people are going to want to see. That's what I would want to see, the story, the evolution of where you've come.
Yeah.
If all people see is the glitter and the gold and the gloss, there's not an element of authenticity. I know authenticity is thrown around a lot these days, but there's not an element of authenticity if you don't see the failure and the humble beginnings.
Yeah, we certainly stubbed our toe, like I said, on everything twice.
Hey man, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. It was funny, a couple weeks ago, Instagram shut down for like a day. For mostly Android users.
Did it? Okay.
Yeah, for the bulk of a morning, Instagram was down, like non-existent.
Okay.
And someone tweeted, "Instagram's down, plunging the world into productivity." and someone else tweeted like, "Instagram's down, nobody is a model for the next 4 hours." And it's just like, people get so wrapped up in it, and I get wrapped up in it. And having a YouTube channel, as you know, it's like we're checking likes, we're checking view counts, we're checking things, and we begin to measure ourselves based on what other people are reacting to. And for me, I go to YouTube all the time. What I don't do is subscribe to everybody I like or like every video, but I'm also going back to these people regularly. So I'm still supporting them.
Yeah.
But my like has no bearing on them. And when I post a video that I'm really proud of, and 23 people like it or view it, I get so down.
It feels like a bummer, doesn't it?
It feels like a bummer.
Yeah.
But my perspective is, if one person sees that, they're encouraged by it, maybe they'll share it with somebody else, and the cycle will begin. But I'm nervous starting this new YouTube venture that I'm going to be starting. Like, what if it bombs? What if people aren't into it? And you have to jump.
Well, that's the thing. Statistically, it will almost definitely bomb, right? Everything should statistically bomb.
Everything should.
Everything should. Yeah. And I just don't think it matters.
I don't think it matters.
I think you got to swing the bat.
You really do.
Yeah.
Paint or get off the ladder, right?
Yeah. Or exactly. I just I have conversations with kids that are either just getting out of college or like surveying the business world for the first time, and I was shocked. I was shocked to hear how unprepared they were for dangerous situations. Right? When I say dangerous, I mean like emotionally dangerous situations. For instance, someone was asking me what the first job I did at IBM entailed. Okay. And it was, I picked up the phone and I called people that all hated me, hoping that someone would less than hate me.
Yeah.
Right? And it was all day for good 8 months. And they're like, that sounds horrific. And it was horrific. But the fact that it sounded horrific shut them down from ever wanting to even try that, because we've kind of facilitated this world where it's like, the only feedback I get is very, very positive. If you were on Facebook, and I realize there's a lot of non-positive things going on in social media, but there's no thumbs down button.
Right.
Or if you're on Instagram, there's like, you could leave a nasty comment, but there's
all likes.
It's only hearts, right? Yeah, I don't have Instagram.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about, and I'm trying to think like from a productivity perspective, as you brought up when we were talking about Instagram. It's like, yeah, I think that we're creating a lot of people that aren't necessarily going to have a productive, I'm going to say gene, but that's not right. It's a productive mode because they're going to want positive feedback all the time.
Yeah.
And there's no receptor for anything but positive feedback.
Correct.
One piece of negative feedback shuts down the system. Yeah. And that makes me nervous.
It does. I mean, part of my whole story is there was a period of my life when I was getting nothing but positive encouragement. Nothing. And it went straight to my head. And I became the most egotistical person I knew. At the time, I didn't really think about it. As I look back on it now, I was so arrogant. And it became a downfall for me. And I had to learn and put people in my life to say, hey, look, it's not good. It's not good.
You're not that great.
You're not that great. Not being a jerk, but this is not going well. I'm seeing this in your life, and it's not good.
Yeah.
People that you trust. Don't just have random people provide critique for you, but you get a core group of people that you trust. And it's a two-way street. They trust you the same way. And some of the most successful people I know are people that have a team around them that have sworn to them that if they're not effective, if they're not being effective anymore in their field, they'll speak truth to that and say, look, hang it up.
What would you say to the flip side of that argument, where like someone is constantly berating themselves, saying, I'm not good and I'm horrible, and the types of things you hear around like a depression type phase?
Sure.
What do you say to those people?
I want to find out more. What's the backstory? Is this just a false humility situation that you've got going on? Do you just want the attention of someone to say, no, let me pat you on the back for the 5,000th time and tell you it's all going to be okay? Or is there a chemical imbalance that's causing you to feel this way? I think there's depth there that needs to be explored. If someone is pursuing something and they are just putting themselves down all the time, I think they need to find something else, because that's contagious.
Yeah, so contagious, do you mean like family or friends-wise, or?
Yeah, both. Yes, and yes. People can hear that attitude, and that's what they're going to associate with it. Everyone has bad days, and it's okay to vent. It's okay to exist in that space, but you have to be able to come out of that and say, look, I've chosen this path here, and I'm going to jump in. I'm going to commit, and when I feel like I'm tripping, I'm going to just keep falling and see where it takes me. Because like you said a couple times tonight, I've made the same mistake twice, but now I'm putting things in place to not. How would you have known what to put in place if you didn't make the mistakes?
Well, YouTube told me, like, so I didn't make it 4 or 5 times.
So there it is. Hence what we're doing. Hence what you went to go find on YouTube. Man, that's the beauty of this whole thing.
Yeah, and so one other thing I wanted to bring up here is that I think there's a really careful balance between that person that is overconfident, over arrogant, and then there's the polar opposite, which is that person that is constantly down on themselves, thinks that they're incapable. And you know what the reality is that if you're really honest with yourself, there are people that are that good.
Yeah.
And there are people that are that bad.
Yeah. The extremes exist.
They do exist. And so I just look at it and I think, okay, so I'm probably somewhere in the middle of this, being like okay at some stuff, pretty poor at some things, and like trying to make a really conscious personal inventory and saying like, where would my strengths be best applied? And I hope that if you look at my LinkedIn page, you'd be like, ding, 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 ding. And that's like what I'm hoping to, kind of extrapolate out over a career. And that's what I think it's a helpful thought process to have as you pursue anything, I think.
Absolutely. You need your team. You need a team of people. Sometimes it's a spouse. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a couple close buddies, boyfriends, girlfriends, to just be there.
It's a different person. It's a different tag in each phase of life.
Right? But the extremes need the team, because if you're constantly down on yourself, you need those people to say, hey, look, get it together. I'm not going to pat you on the back again. Snap out of it.
Yeah.
Put your boots on. Get in the mess. Let's clean it up. Let's do it. And if you're arrogant, you need someone to say, look, I'm not going to shake your hand for the 5,000th time and tell you you're awesome.
Right.
Like, stop. Or go befriend someone who's having a tough time. Like, find a way to humble yourself. Find a way to encourage yourself, and live in that little space.
Yeah, I always bring this conversation back to the conversation of it's order and chaos, right?
Yeah.
So like, dance on that line between the known and the unknown.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
So I got to ask you the classic Unconsumed podcast question.
Okay.
And that is, if I took all of your musical instruments away, burned your house down, and there's no insurance money, which I had to think of for the first time last week, and I dropped you off in Idaho, Boise, Idaho.
Okay.
Which is not a musical center.
It's not. I mean, there
not
is
that I know of. Maybe
there is a symphony, and there is at least one jazz club in Boise.
Okay, well then you can't go to Boise. You have to go to.
Where can we go? Where can I tell you right now that I know
does not have a jazz club? I don't want you to just be able to go borrow an instrument and show up at a jazz club.
Maybe Cheyenne, Oklahoma.
Cheyenne, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Cheyenne, Wyoming. Is it Wyoming?
Well, I was going to say Cheyenne, Wyoming is like a city, but
that's right. Maybe there would. I think it's Wyoming. Sorry for anyone over there. I think it's Wyoming. Yeah.
Well, the Cheyenne, Wyoming it's a city. It's a larger city.
Yeah.
But Cheyenne, Oklahoma, I'd never heard of, so maybe that fits the.
It's made up city of Cheyenne, Oklahoma.
Yeah. You're in a fictitious city in Oklahoma that has no jazz clubs.
Right.
What do you do if you have nothing and you have?
I have to make ends meet.
You gotta scrap together. Yeah.
I'm handy. I'm good with tools.
Okay.
So basic construction. When I lived in California for a while, I painted fences and worked on cars. So I'm mechanically inclined. So I'll do anything on a car except chase down electrical issues.
Okay.
If I have a lift and proper tools, I can basically do anything. I won't. I can't pull apart your transmission, but I can certainly replace it and do all the brake, suspension, do all that stuff. So that's what I would scrape together that way and leverage that to find music and pursue it.
All right, you are killing me because you are the most creative person we've had on the podcast, but you hit me with the most tactical response, which is not how it's supposed to go.
So sorry.
Well, I'm saying that's not how the brain science says it should go.
Right.
But you flipped the script again, my friend.
Well, trying.
Is there anything else you want to bring up while we're wrapping here?
I'm going to be starting a YouTube series, hopefully soon. If you're willing to go to, in addition to subscribing to the Unconsumed podcast, hit that button, find your way over to Stephen Lynerd. That's my name, my YouTube channel. Subscribe to that. Over the next 2 to 3 weeks, I'm going to be hitting in earnest 2 different series. One called The One About, which will be me discussing various topics about leadership, leading a band, the world of music, whether it's arranging, composing, some of the finer technical aspects. And then it's called The One With, where I'm going to be featuring some different guests. We're going to be talking about music, life, and then we're going to make music together. So be on the lookout for that. And again, explore those creative sides and be willing to fail and be willing to pick yourself up.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I picked up watching some of Steven's stuff on YouTube. It's not necessarily as, it's not like doesn't have too much vocals in your stuff.
We are largely instrumental. The YouTube series will feature some vocals coming up.
Okay, so like I listened to some of the stuff you have on YouTube today as like a background thing for when I'm working, and nice. I love to listen to instrumentals at work because if someone's talking to me, that's not where I want to be.
Correct.
But if it's just like a great instrumental, like we had it on earlier, it's just a list of instrumental songs.
Yeah.
Your stuff fits perfect for that. So like productivity jams.
Cool.
Is that okay if I call it that?
PJs, as we're going to coin now. Productivity.
Well, we came up with desk jockey diet last week.
Ooh,
So
that's right, you did desk jockey diet.
I'll tell you what, that's going to catch on.
It is.
Yeah. So, and then in terms of housekeeping items, we get quite a few views every week, which is fantastic. We have like a lot of people are interested on iTunes, which is killer.
Yeah.
But the demographic that we talk to on this podcast doesn't hit the subscribe button, leave comments, or very many people hit the like button.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I watch probably 20, 30 videos on YouTube a week, and I don't ever hit the subscribe button. I don't never comment, and I never hit the like button. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if you would be so kind as to hit subscribe, we're trying to get to the 1,000 mark. For some internal YouTube reasons, you get some better perks on your account.
Yeah, and the comments will always help with content too. People like letting us know what you think of the podcast, or maybe what you would want to hear about or see.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. We've gone through some things where we can kind of give back to the community a little bit, like this project today being number one.
Yeah, we will save you 7 hours that you'll never get back.
Yeah, if you want to see how that was all put together, I'll save you 7 hours real quick, and I'll tell you what else. The guys that are trying to do that video on YouTube today, not good.
Not happening.
Not happening.
No, all love, but not happening.
I appreciate the effort.
Yes, good effort.
Well, it got me to the point where like I felt like I could at least open the box and not be these things don't even come with power cords. Like, they'll send you out to sea.
Yeah, completely.
All right, well, that's a wrap for this week.
Yep.
Thanks for listening. Absolutely. Thanks for coming on, Stephen.
It's an honor to be here. I've said this, many people have sat in this chair that I admire, so it's an honor.
Hey, I hope to keep it going, and I appreciate everything you do for us. We'll see you soon.